Find a comfortable stance. Start by rolling out your neck. Roll your neck in the opposite direction. Nod your head yes. Shake your head no. Think about your head being inside of a barrel, encircling the sides of your skull against the inside of that barrel, and switch direction. Arms out in a T, tiny circles forward, loading some weight into the shoulders, then backwards. Wringing out the towel, so to speak, twisting around your sternum, arms straight. Right arm straight, draw a giant figure 8 around your shoulder. Switch directions, same arm. Switch to your other arm, same thing. Arm straight, draw a giant figure 8 around your shoulder. Switch direction. Hips facing forward, palms facing up. Twist from above the belly button as much as you can, looking over your shoulder at the upturned palm. Elbow copter. Switch direction. Pulling tension into the front line, kind of like you're jumping without coming off the ground. Letting the shoulders open up a little bit. Leading with the head, rolling down the spine from your head to the pelvic floor. Trying to articulate vertebrae by vertebrae. You're going to switch direction, going from the pelvic floor up. Come back to neutral, leading with your head. Wiggle back and forth like a snake, your spine following the way your head is pulling you. Switch directions so you're leading with the hips. The spine is following the hips instead of the neck. Return to that barrel. Your torso is now in the barrel. You're scraping the sides of your rib cage against the inside of a barrel. I call this Thoracic Vortex from John Yuen. Switch directions. Work on this a lot in belly dance fusion classes too. Down to the hips, roll them out. Circle them around. I keep my knees straight, shoulders in more or less one place to make sure this movement's more hip driven. Switch directions. Alrighty, we're going to go through our pelvic floor. So we want to move from an anterior to a posterior pelvic tilt with as much control and isolation as possible. So you'll notice I'm keeping my shoulders, my knees, my neck in one place. T-spine's not really moving, trying to keep this in the lower spine and the hips. Bring the knees together. Roll out the knees, pushing the feet into the floor. Letting the four corners of each foot press into the ground. Switch direction. Ski back and forth on the sides of the feet. We're kind of imitating rolling our ankles. We want to build some stability here. Back and forth from the heel to the toe. I generally recommend you try to push yourself to an edge, let yourself fall if you need to, garner information from what it feels like to fall. We're going to circle around, weight on as small of a portion of each foot as possible. Again, find the edges of your balance. Switch direction. Lift one leg up, roll out that ankle. Switch direction. Keeping your weight on the same leg, we're going to kind of draw a figure eight with our knee, wiggling around the hips. I also, throughout this, will point to either having a straight or a bent supporting leg. You can play with where you feel more stability there. Now I am doing the same kind of figure eight, but leading with the heel instead of my toes. Other leg, roll out the ankle. Switch direction. Go back into that figure eight with the knee. First with the bent leg, so you're muscularly engaging, and then straightening the leg, so you're stacking the joints. See how that changes things? And then leading with the heel of the foot rather than the knee. This one's still awkward for me, as you can probably tell. Come into a straddle, hinge at the hips, put your hands or your fingertips on the floor, kind of wiggling my spine out, starting to feel the backs of my legs, my hamstrings stretch a little bit. Unhinge the hips, Cossack squat down to the right. Try to find that flat foot, back to center, down to the left. I like to bounce around a little bit. Back to center, down to the right again. Then to the left, and do this a couple times. Toss it down to the right and turn it over into a lunge. I'm trying to square my hips, tuck my tailbone, elongate my lower back so I feel a little pulse into my front hip flexor. Keeping the back flat, that's what those hands are doing there. Switch back to the Cossack on the left just as a transition to Cossack to the other side. Go into a lunge on the other side. Same thing here. I'm driving my knee forward, trying to tuck my tailbone, elongate my lower back. Slight little pulses into my hip flexor here. Back to the Cossack, back to center. Hinging, walking the feet together, coming back down into a regular squat position. Going to start with these Buddha prayer pull downs, pulling my hands down, elbows are pushing against my knees are pushing back. All of these reps, I'm doing 8 kind of dynamic pulses and then an 8-second hold. Pushing the knee out, again, the knee is pushing back. I'm trying to straighten the left arm against the left knee. And then holding for 8 seconds. Switching to the other side, so right hand pushing open the right knee, knee pushes back. I like to hold my ankle with my other arm. Then I'm going to think about closing the distance between my forehead and the ground. You can do this with stacked fists. You can make the hands wider, like you're opening the hands if you need more space in between. Last one here is I am holding on to my ankle, opening up to the sky, and then closing. I am looking at my hand as I'm doing this, so my neck is twisting with my T-spine. Then I'm going to hold at the top for 8 seconds. I like to wriggle out my wrists just because I like to keep moving. Not necessary. Switching to the other side. Same thing, finding that rotation from the T-spine, keeping the hips in place, staying in that squat position. Turning my head to look at my hand so my spine can rotate more easily. Holding at the top, rolling out the wrist. Oh, just kind of resting here for a minute. Taking my hands behind me, walking my feet forward, pushing my hips up into this sort of crab position. Kind of going back and forth, just thinking about how I'm engaging the lower parts of my butt and my quad to push my hips up forward. And I like to wiggle out my hips a little bit. My hands are still supporting me behind me. From here, I like to walk myself forward back into a squat, push my hands into the ground, unroll up to standing. From here, I'm going to walk down into a plank position and do 8 scapula push-ups. My scapulae are retracting and protracting as my sternum is leading towards and away from the ground with a straight arm position here. Dropping onto my hands and my knees, I'm going to go through my wrists. So first I'm going to push into my fingertips to initiate the heel of the hand coming up off the ground. So I'm not just pulling that up, I am pushing into my fingertips. Then I'm going to push down into the bottom knuckles to get the heel to come up off the ground. Then palms flat, find the external rotation from the arms. Thinking about the armpits of your elbow coming forward, arms straight the whole time. Turning the hands around so the fingertips are facing back at you. I like to go through cat-cow here just while I'm stretching out in front of my wrists. Also, don't mind my hand balancers hyperextension. That is just what happens. Take the palms upside down so the backs of the hands are on the ground. Straighten your arms to load some weight there. Drum your fingertips into the floor. Explore some external rotation here. The point is just to get both sides of the wrist warms up. I'm going to do 5 pseudo knuckle push-ups. So I'm not doing a full knuckle push-ups. I'm still on my knees. You can adjust the level of resistance by where your hips are placed. Come back into a seated position. Just going to shake out the hands. Touch your tailbone to elongate your lower back. Find this triangle in front of you, arms going up until your ribs start to flare out. Turn your fingers so they're facing away from you. Pinkies are forward. Reach and pulse for 8 counts and then hold for 8 seconds and engage. This is an active shoulder drill. Shake it out, set it up at the same time. We're going to do one arm at a time. So lower back is flat, ribs are in. I'm not making sure I'm not turtling my neck. I'm trying to actively reach that straight arm and feel my shoulders open. It doesn't look like much is happening, but you should be feeling this quite a bit. And also, please do notice that I'm keeping my arm as straight as possible when I do this. I don't want to be bending my arms here. Also, keeping my ribs in, lower back flat. All right. I always like to stretch out my calves. I like to put a yoga block at the wall. I like to straighten my leg with my toes on the block and lean my hips towards the wall. I find a really nice calf stretch doing this. I do about 20 to 30 seconds on either leg, and I just do this every morning. I train a lot of explosive acrobatic stuff. It's very helpful. Feels good. I also like to stretch out my quads every morning. Similar reason, I load my quads a lot. They get really tight, even though I have decent hip extension, just from a lot of jumping. So I am pushing my hips square back towards the wall to find that stretch in the quad. You can stretch your quads however you feel like you get the best stretch. This is just what I like to do, what I feel like gives me the best kind of square hip quad stretch here. A lot of the positions I go through need square hips and open quads. I do this longer or shorter, kind of depending on how I'm feeling each morning. All right.